Good afternoon, Joe.
Good afternoon, everybody.
I think Frank might have been stuck in another meeting, so maybe we'll just kick off the podcast and he'll join. I think we've done enough of these
Sure.
where I can handle it.
Sure you can.
Yeah,
Well, I'm very, very excited to be here with you all today and talk a little bit about my favorite topic, which is pharmacy. I'm sure you've got a battery of questions, and I'm sure some of the people that are listening in and you know, trying to understand pharmacy benefits or benefits at large are probably curious about a few things as well. So happy to be here to talk about them. If you'd like, I can give a brief overview of who I am and where I come from and in my current role here at Alliant.
that would be great. I just want to welcome everybody. I think it's the sixth Steph and Frank show, minus Frank today, or hopefully he'll be here in a few minutes. So yeah, today we're going to talk about drugs, and not the cheap kind. So, Joe, I want you to take it over. Yeah, I think it'd be great if you gave everybody kind of a brief intro and your background and what you do here at Alliant for our clients, and then we can just have a conversation.
Of course. So my name is Joseph Jurowitz. I'm a leader in our national pharmacy practice. I run the East Division for Alliance National Pharmacy Practice. That's all health plans and clients alike that are in this space. I've been in the industry about 16 years. I got my start in big pharma, then moved over to a company called Medco, which became Express Scripts, where I was a financial account executive. And at that time, when I left, I had about a $2.1 billion book of business. So I was in charge of their P&L, margin guard, and also trend explanation to these different clients. So it was an on-site type of role. After spending almost 4 years there at Medco Express Scripts and post the merger, I got a call to join another consulting firm in their national pharmacy practice, where I helped build a national coalition and their private exchange response to the public exchange market in that 2012-2013 timeframe. After building those two things and being in charge of a large amount of pharmacy projects, both large and small, I had taken a chance after another 4 years there to go join a startup PBM and help build a PBM from the ground up, which is rare. You almost never get to do that. So I decided to jump out of the airplane without a parachute and go to a startup with 3 people employed, with 0 lives under management, and build the thing for about 2 years. I had a lot of fun doing it, learned a lot, but as you can imagine, being at the biggest PBM in the world, another major market consulting firm as reputable as Alliant, and then moving over to a startup, seems like it would have been a very risky career move, and it definitely did pay off. So, spent 2 years there building that, and then after 2 years, I got to remain impartial. Again, I came to Alliant to run a division of our national pharmacy practice, and I haven't looked back. It's been such a wonderful experience being here for the last 7 years with you all wonderful people and helping our clients alike and helping them navigate some of the challenges that are really inherent in this market. It's not just that there are very, very expensive drugs. It's not just that there are some drugs that are inflating at a significant amount. It's a combination of the two. And now, ever more, there are more and more super high-cost drugs that are coming into the market in the fray. We're talking about cell and gene therapies, as many of you have probably heard. So that's a little background on me. I can go into more detail, but I don't like to talk about myself that much.
Sure you do. I know you. That's okay. We all like to talk about ourselves. And I really feel like Alliant is really lucky to have you. And I've been really lucky to have you present with me in presentations. And I know that the clients and our prospective clients have learned a lot from going through a process with you. So, and hi, Frank. I know you were late because you were in a meeting, so that's totally fine. We kind of jumped in without you. I hope that's okay.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, today's world, the world keeps going, even if I'm not around. So
I know sometimes we have those client meetings and they run over. It happens.
Yep. So yeah, so thank you, Joe, for joining. I mean, I'll echo Stephanie's comments. I mean, I've been doing this a really long time. So I've been in this industry 37 years myself, and I know I look fabulous and nobody would believe it, but 37 years I've been doing this, and I worked at some of the largest firms who had our own pharmacy coalitions, collectives, whatever you want to call it. And it's exciting to be at a firm, quite frankly, where we're agnostic, where we're really not pushing our clients to our collective, and then we're really looking at this holistically and really what makes the most sense for our clients. So, I guess, pharmacy is a hot topic right now. I mean, let's face it. It used to be, when I first started my career, pharmacy was about 10% of the cost. And then it rose to around 15, and it's creeped up to 20 and almost 30, or 35%. I've seen it as high. And to your point, with these new gene therapies, which quite frankly are fabulous breakthroughs in science, but they come with a tremendous cost associated with them. So can we spend a little bit of time and talk about gene therapy, and really what's on the horizon, and really what are the big areas where gene therapy really seems to have taken off? And
Yeah.
if a client has somebody with this particular illness or ailment, what might they look at? And especially, I think our smaller clients
Yes.
are going to be the most nervous about it, because when you only have 500 or 6 or 700,000 in premium, and some of these medications are over $1 million or well into the millions of dollars, I think it's a pretty scary prospect for those clients. So if we could talk about gene therapy a little bit and what's on the horizon, that would be great.
Joe, I think I heard you say everybody is only one hire away from hiring a hemophiliac, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that there's a prescribed risk, not to borrow a pun, but there's a prescribed risk inherently in some of these really, really expensive drugs, whether it's gene therapy, whether it's end stage renal, whether it's going to be HAE, right? There's a lot of diseases out there that happen to have life-saving and very innovative drugs that happen to be very, very expensive. So, what does that really mean? It means that, when you're thinking through your plan strategy, you need to contemplate some of these drugs. You need to make sure that your stop loss is covering them without a laser. You need to make sure that your benefit strategy and coverage elections, both on the pharmacy side and the medical side, are aligned. You've had that conversation, because in many cases, a lot of these infused products, almost all the gene therapy drugs are infused, and the supermajority of them are actually going to be billed and filled underneath the medical benefit. So it's very important to understand your coverage strategy, both on the medical and pharmacy side, as well as your downside risk protection with the stop loss vendors, and how that's really covered. And that should be a unified approach. That should be something that your consultant team really contemplates together, and that's something that Alliant does on behalf of our clients. So pharmacy really is the most frequently utilized benefit. It's roughly around, and Frank, you're right, it's roughly around 30% of every healthcare dollar spent. In some cases, it's a lot more. And remember, you might think, oh, pharmacy, I saw it the other day, it was only 22% of our plan spend. But you got to look on the medical side of the benefit, because there's a lot of drugs that are filled, specialty drugs, infused products that are filled under the medical side of the benefit that could be managed through a proactive pharmacy consulting strategy. And what do I mean by that? There are rebates that are gained and garnered for some of those medical specialty infused products, and you can recapture a significant amount of that value through proper negotiation and contracting with your medical vendor and pharmacy vendor alike. So, there really does need to be expert level oversight. It doesn't matter how large or small your plan is. If you're self-insured, you need to be thinking about these risks, because at 1,000, I'll just give you the quick math, right? The quick math is, for every 1,000 members on plan, that's generally between $1 million and $1.5 million in drug spend. Let's call it $1.2 million, split the difference. Usually around $1,200 per member per year is the spend. Around 60% of that today is specialty. Around 30 to 35% of that comes back in rebates. Just if you're looking at that, one hemophiliac without gene therapy drugs, just looking at one hemophiliac today, will more than double your drug spend.
Wow.
One. So, if you're at Hemlibra, that could be really easily a $1.5 million regimen, depending on assay management and how you're factoring or delivering that factor rather to those patients. So it really does make sense to have certain guardrails in place, and it's not as easy to say, oh, well, we've got a strong contract, it was negotiated by an expert team 2 years ago. You really need to look at it almost at an annual basis, and more than that, you need to think about your coverage strategy. You need to think about how the PBMs or whatever vendor you're with is governing the utilization and how they are releasing some of those different drugs. So, for example, with hemophiliacs, you have to get that dose, and in some cases it's very rare. So they may overfill. If you think about it, like glasses of water, you need to get two, or bottles of water. You need 2 bottles of water to stay hydrated at lunch. Okay, let's just say that, and you really only can handle about a bottle and a quarter, and that's all you really need. But they come in bottles, so you have to get 2. You're wasting 3/4 of a bottle of water because you need a bottle and a quarter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Now imagine these bottles of water are $100,000 each. That means every month you're wasting $75,000 every single month if you don't have proper assay management rules in place. So we're just talking about hemophilia in the drugs that are available now. We're not even talking about gene therapy yet. Gene therapy, there are drugs out there called Hemgenix and Roctavian for hemophilia A and B that are multiples of millions of dollars for one shot. Now, that shot is a gene therapy drug, so it's intended to be once every so often, maybe once every year or 2 or 3, maybe a one-time shot. We don't know yet. There's not enough data. There's not enough experience with this product in the market, and there's not enough patients who have taken it worldwide to really have a good tracking of that. We're not really sure how efficacious it's going to be in the long term. The FDA provides fast tracking for some of these products because they're rare diseases, but they're looking at safety. They're not necessarily looking at efficacy and how much more that product is worth in terms of a quality adjusted life year, or QALY. That's the metric that the ICER uses, basically, the Independent Health Review Organization for Pharma.
Do we have an indication, though, Joe, how because we know in a self-funded world, a client has a say in how they're going to cover, these medications. But in a fully insured arrangement, most times the carrier or the vendor is determining, how they're going to handle it. Do we have an indication on how, a CVS, Aetna, a Cigna, ESI, do we know how they're going to be handling these types of medications? Or are they doing a wait and look, see kind of? Because to your point, these are very expensive medications with very specific usages and or therapeutic, uses. I can't even speak today. So do we have any indication of what the carriers are going to be doing?
Most of them are covering these drugs. And
they're
covering them, but there's a risk premium attached to them, right? So they're going to say, look, we'll cover these products or this list of products, but your premium is going to go up by a certain amount for the privilege of covering these, and it's mandatory, it's compulsory in most cases. For self-insured, you have an option. Many, like Cigna, for example, has got Embark, where they're going to cover a certain amount of these drugs for, I think it's $1.50 PM, something like that. I forget don't quote me on the fee, but there's a fee that they're going to ascribe to the plan, and it's your election. If you want that coverage, you can buy it up, and you'll be protected from the cost of those products. It's an interesting concept, but the problem there is they're trying to get these drugs covered so that they can help provide maybe long-term relief. Maybe we can get some patients on them and see what happens. I think it's interesting. They don't want to be left holding the bag. The more members or the more plan sponsors that cover their members for these products, the lower the risk for the insurer, if you think about it like that, right? Because the more that subscribe to paying into this product, the more they're going to be able to collect in premium, the more they're going to be able to afford these products when they come to bear. And right now, it's very heavily front-loaded in terms of premium versus value, because unless you know for a fact that you've got a hemophiliac and they're likely to take Roctavian, or maybe they're looking at Hemgenix or some of the others out there that are available on the market, they're likely not going to see that much of a reward back yet. Because there's so few patients that would qualify for a gene therapy drug, and even fewer still that are willing to go through the necessary steps to take some of these gene therapy drugs. To remind everybody, these have the potential to be curative. The FDA calls a cure 3 years of 0 viral load. So they're looking at this in a year eclipse of 3 years. The costs are not included in budget rates really on many of these many of these forecasts that a lot of the consultants are providing out, because it's such a low likelihood that that's going to happen, that they're not baking it into a lot of their trends. So
Right.
that's part of that
Yeah,
understanding.
and it's hard to see, and the incidence is probably relatively low, so it's hard to know how many you're going to have per, you know, per thousand in the population too. So, jumping chips a little bit,
Yeah.
can we talk about GLPs? Because I know that's a hot topic now. I feel personally that they're meeting with such success with people with weight loss that it's helping people who were on the cusp of diabetes, and who had risk factors that have come to the surface, that it's helping people lose weight and eliminate some of these factors. So I have a little bit of a yin and a yang, or a push pull with GLPs, because they seem to be working for a lot of people, but they're very expensive for the employer. And people do, they were originally intended for folks with diabetes, and it seems like people are taking these medications without diabetes, strictly for weight loss. So there's kind of a yin and a yang, or a push and a pull, if you want to call it with that. What are your thoughts on the GLPs? And is it something you think that employers should be covering? And are they, is this something that we should be managing more tightly? So what are your thoughts overall on GLPs? Because as somebody who struggled with their weight, I'm having good success with Mounjaro. I happen to be, a diabetic, but then I have friends who are taking Ozempic and other medications that aren't diabetic, but were at high risk for diabetes and high blood pressure, and this seems to have really helped them, being on Ozempic. But it's cost the health plans a lot of money, and employers are starting to really cut back on the access to these medications, because there is so much abuse in it, and they really want to make sure that the diabetics can get access to it. Because I can tell you there are definitely refills that I go to do on the Mounjaro where it's not available. I can't get it, and I have to wait a week or two to get it, and I go almost a whole week without my medication. So let's talk
Yeah.
about GLPs a little bit.
So,
Joe,
sure,
before you
certainly.
say anything, I feel like GLPs are so hot right now that even The Simpsons are putting out a TV show just
Everybody.
about, yes. So I'm not a big fan of The Simpsons, but I think I might watch that one.
Yeah, the Real
Yeah.
Housewives, everybody's on Ozempic, and
Right.
or if anybody loses weight and looks fabulous, the first words are, they're on Ozempic.
Yeah.
Ozempic face, there's the Ozempic face.
Yeah. So a couple of things on GLP-1s. I'm going to give you the consultant answer, and I'm sure everyone loves that one. It depends. It depends on a lot of things,
Allergies are
right?
so bad today.
Yeah, that's quite all right. We barely hear you. It's okay. What I would say is, you got to think about a number of things when you're covering these different products, right? If you're looking to cover them, if you're not covering them today, we'd probably say don't cover them for weight loss for now. It's probably the direction I'd go. And it's because of the unknown unknowns, right? You don't know how much of your population is taking these now and would shift to paying for them underneath the benefit if you were to cover them. Yeah, there is definitely weight loss proven. Some of these drugs have been on the market for a bit. We're thinking about Rybelsus and some of those that have been available. Ozempic's been available since I think it's 2017, if I'm not mistaken. But these are going to see and experience continued growth, both on the diabetic side and on the weight loss side. And there's very extensive pipeline of this product, both for there's two products. It's semaglutide that you may have heard of, and then there's tirzepatide. Mounjaro and Zepbound, you may have heard of those.
Mm-hmm.
They're tirzepatide, and the primary indication is weight loss, right? For Mounjaro, it's type 2 diabetes is the primary indication, but again, it's for weight loss as well. Tirzepatide actually is a little bit more aggressive for weight loss. Then you've got semaglutide, which is the Ozempics and the Wegovy's, if you will. And Wegovy's weight loss and Ozempic is type 2 diabetes. But both of these products, both have been proven for, in many cases, type 2 diabetes and weight loss, and both have shown promise for both. The thing about this is the average price of these drugs per patient per year, if you stay on them for full course for the year, is around $13,000.
Right.
That's a lot of money. That's more than $1,000 a month that, the cost will be burdened in most cases, the supermajority of that cost will be burdened by the plan. Even in a high deductible or max out of pocket lens, still, if this is the only drug they're on, more than likely, 2/3 of this overall cost is going to get borne by the plan, if not more. So when you think about that, for every patient that goes on, it's going to be around $6,000 to $7,000 to the plan sponsor at a minimum. So think about that. At what point does a plan sponsor say, look, basically a little more than 1/3 of Americans are classified as obese that would be meeting the requirement for weight loss of this particular product? Do we want to cover it? What if, and right now, these drugs are injectables, but later this year, early 2025, we're going to see oral GLP-1s coming out, both for tirzepatide and semaglutide. They're going to be less aggressive than the injectable, from what I'm hearing from a lot of the different sources that we hear from. Eli Lilly was on CNBC talking about that, but it'll be more approachable for members that maybe are feeling some of the adverse effects from the injection, even before they titrate up to more aggressive dose forms. The other thing I'd say is, with that oral product coming out, most members that are, holding back because they don't want an injection will probably, acquiesce and take that overall product.
Well, it's also scary, Joe.
To...
It's also scary too, because one of the first warnings they have is this could cause thyroid cancer. Like, I don't think we even know how many people potentially have the risk for thyroid cancer. This may end up resulting in thyroid cancer down the road. Because I think it's too new, right? I mean, it's just too new in terms of how many people are just taking it and ignoring that risk. But like, I was afraid to take it initially, to be honest with you, because one of the first things you have to do is acknowledge the fact that you're basically saying that that this could cause thyroid cancer. Like, you listen to all these commercials where they have this upbeat, fun music, and you see this family running on the beach, and then in the like small, very low volume, they go, may cause death, internal bleeding, thyroid cancer. Like, this is like the biggest warning. It says it flat out on any of them. This could cause thyroid cancer.
Frank, that's a great point. I mean, a lot of what we know about this product is only short-lived. Zepbound's been out for less than a year. Mounjaro's been out for a year and a half. Wegovy's been out about 2 years, and there's been a lot of utilization, a lot of these products. There's been a lot of stock out, so they're out of stock. They're hard to get and in shortage. A lot of these products are being warehoused for members with type 2 diabetes as best they can. So, when you think about it, we don't know what the long-term effects of some of these products are going to be. That may be scary for some people on the phone to hear, but we don't know. Your doctor does not know.
It's one of the biggest warnings. I mean, it's actually scary. If you read through the warnings, the biggest, I mean, it's all over their website. It's a disclosure. You have to actually acknowledge the fact that you read it before they'll even prescribe it to you. So it is scary. So people should know that there are inherent risks with looking fabulous if you're not taking it for a medical reason.
That's a great point.
There's an inherent risk for it.
Hey, Frank, speaking of looking fabulous, a lot of these, and by the way, you are, very handsome gentleman you are, a lot of what I've been hearing and seeing lately is like hairdressers are stocking, over-the-counter versions of compounded tirzepatide, and they're injecting just like they are. They've got people like Botox that are doing the Botox injections, are bringing tirzepatide injections that have been compounded.
Well, even in your like Instagram feeds, there are like services that you can sign up for, like $300 or $400 a month, and they'll ship you. Yeah, they'll ship it to you. I have friends literally going to Mexico on vacation and stockpiling because you could buy it over the counter at the airport.
Medical tourism.
It's crazy, but people don't realize that this is like any medication that has risks, has interactions, has things that you need to you need to be under the care of a physician. And one of the biggest risks is thyroid cancer. So it is something that you should not enter lightly. And to your point, unless it comes out after years and years and years, like many of the allergy medications that are now over the counter, a lot of the anti-acid and reflux and a lot of these medications are over the counter. It's because after so many years of people taking it, the inherent risks are low. We don't really know on these medications what the long-term side effects and how many people are going to get thyroid cancer or some other cancer as the result of these.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of side effects that come along with this. I mean, what a lot of, I was on a panel recently, we were talking about this, and a lot of the PharmDs are saying, hey, look, you got problems with bone mineral density. There's other things that patients are starting to experience, like gastrointestinal issues, long-term gastrointestinal issues, because your GI tract is slowing down. Basically, what they're doing is they're immobilizing your ability to push food through your GI tract. So what does that mean to me? Well, if I've been on this, and basically they said once you're on it almost for life. Otherwise, you have recidivism, you are hungry right away. All of those things that kept you slimming down, the reverse effect happens, and now you're apparently ravenous. You're very hungry. Because you haven't been getting a lot of the nutrition that you need. And that's the biggest problem, is that when you're not hungry and you're eating, think about what you're going to eat. You're not hungry at all. You can only eat a little bit of food, and you need, I don't know, a little bit of a Snickers bar, okay, instead of eating a piece of protein chicken. You're not getting as much protein as you should be through your system, because your system can't process much food. Your system's not breaking down a lot of these different foods the right way, and that's a problem. So it's, we're seeing muscle loss and amplified atrophy in some of these different muscles, because you're not getting the protein.
I can tell you, Joe, I have like zero
Greg, what's
appetite.
been your experience? You mentioned
so basically, I haven't had any gastrointestinal issues. I did on Ozempic. I started on Ozempic. It was giving me blurred vision, and it was I was having gastrointestinal issues, to be honest with you. So I moved to Manjaro. I have had none of the gastrointestinal issues. But I'm kind of turned. I don't like any food. I'm Italian and Greek, so this is like the worst thing ever. Like, I hate everything. The only thing I like, believe it or not, and I've been like living on it, and to your point, it's probably going to end up with scurvy because it's probably not good for me. But all I like is Pennsylvania Dutch, those hard, crunchy pretzels. That's it. That's the only thing I like. I basically eat a box of Schneider's Pennsylvania Dutch pretzels because it's the only thing I don't schmatz and that I'm not totally turned off by. I hate everything. Food wise, I'm like, ugh, I can't even like think about it. And that's not good.
I'm not a doctor.
I should be having protein. I should be having vegetables. I should be eating
I'm not
salads and greens. Yeah.
No. But nausea, vomiting, and other things that are in the Pepto-Bismol commercial, I'm not going to get graphic. I think you could all leave yourself to your own devices to figure out what I'm talking about. But the Pepto-Bismol side effects that we're thinking about with GI issues, that's just the surface level. It's the long-term gastrointestinal mobility or immobility that is the problem. What happens if you come off this and you no longer have the ability to digest food the appropriate way, right? We don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now. What happens if you're on this drug for 10 years?
That's what I'm saying. Everybody's jumping on this way. So I think it's smart for employers to look at this more closely, because although it's having, but there are some, yings to the yang that, people are losing weight and no longer diabetic and no longer have high blood pressure.
Sugar. You're looking
at
it
has these other things that potentially could
metabolic. Hey, look, there's yin and yang. To your point, metabolic syndrome, decreased heart risk, all the things that come along with being heavier and having a higher BMI over what is normally suggested. And by the way, you look at a normal BMI, or what they say is like in a normal healthy range, and it's like way low. It's way lower than you'd think.
Oh my God, I'd be anorexic, and this would be a whole other podcast.
Right. Well, I mean, I think we just need to think about this. There's a lot of side effects. We shouldn't go into taking this product lightly. There's a lot of benefits. Hey, look, weight loss helps with a lot of different things. It's going to help lower your cholesterol. It's going to help.
But at what cost? But at what cost?
Well, well, apparently it's $13,000 a year.
$13,000 a year. Gastrointestinal issues, which are going to make you very attractive with your friends and family.
Maybe some hair loss. I've heard
hair
loss. Let's hope it doesn't make you attractive to your family.
Ozempic face. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Like I take it, so I can't be like a hypocrite. But I take it for, I have, mild, and when I say mild, my A1C is borderline, without any medication. So this keeps me really good. So it brings me from like a 6.9 or a 7.8, A1C to like a 5 something. So it does help. It does work. It is lowering my appetite, although I think Schneider's is going to have a very good year from a pretzel. So invest in Schneider's stock. But it's, it does have its side effects.
I'm worried about you and those pretzels. Take yourself a.
I'm addicted. I'm telling you, I'm addicted. I stopped going and buying them because I literally was like an addict with these pretzels.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, take protein shakes. You know, make
Yeah,
sure you have
I got to
your
do
protein
something.
out there.
I got to do something.
Very important.
So
So for weight
just
loss and diabetes, let's talk about coverage strategy real quick. So for diabetes,
Yeah.
all plans must cover. It's an essential
Yep.
benefit. You have
Yep.
to cover them. You could put on step therapy and prior authorization or even quantity limits to ensure that only 30 days supplies at a time could be filled. Those are some of the things that we would require or recommend. You know, for weight loss, I mean, if you do not cover, I would not recommend necessarily adding coverage. I think that if a plan sponsor really wants to, I mean, it's up to their philosophy. We're here to help you no matter what you want to do. If you are going to add it, we would, you know, think that you should ensure you have prior authorization requirements, that at least there's some type of, you know, prescriber oversight with these products. They're not just being filled and no one's looking at the patient and following up with them to make sure that they're not eating Snyder's and Snyder's alone, right? You want to make sure that they're having the appropriate nutrition conversations, that they're at least working out or have tried other products prior to taking this particular drug. Maybe that they've exercised or worked in a different regimen. But remember, what happens with a lot of these different BMI requirements? On the fully insured plan, some of them are saying BMI of 40 before you can get them for weight loss.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Now, yeah. And then what happens when you're at the cusp? You're maybe BMI of 40 or 41, you qualify, and then next time you go to fill, you're underneath 40. You know,
you got to eat your feelings to get over 40 so you can get
I mean, at that point, but what happens is you get authorized for a 6-month period or maybe a 12-month period, and then they say, oh, you no longer qualify. Well, it's been working. I'm losing weight. You know, well, you no longer qualify. You've lost too much weight. Now you don't meet the BMI requirements. Good for you. But you still have a problem. You're still working through that weight loss, and now you're off of it. And now you've got the adverse problem. So it's about pairing the weight loss coverage with a Noom, with other vendors, with vendors that are going to help you migrate off.
And I got to be honest with you. And I don't know why people forget about good old-fashioned Weight Watchers. It's portion control. You can eat everything. You can, you know, be at a family party and you can taste what, you know, Auntie Barbara brought. You can have a piece of the cake for dessert. Like it's portion control. It's so there are other ways to do it besides the weight loss medications, but it is a hot topic, so we wanted to talk about it today. We're definitely going to run over on this topic, and you know what? I'm okay going a little over on this one because I think it's so important. Two final things that I want to make sure we hit on today before we kind of wrap up. I want to talk coalition versus non-coalition. So going direct. So our philosophy for handling pharmacy versus some of our competitors and why we don't have a coalition and why we didn't go down that route and why we feel being agnostic is a better approach. And then I also want to just make sure that we talk about any other hot topics or trends we're seeing in the industry or emerging that we can talk to our clients about, or our clients can talk to us about, so that we make sure that we stay top of mind with what's really going on in the industry, because we know GLPs and gene therapies were a hot topic, but there's other things going on. There are things moving to to generic. There are new medications coming out in the brand world. So since the cost is creeping, and since the cost is creeping up so much, like what are our top cost saving strategies? So I don't know. In 5 minutes or less, I'd like to try to maybe wrap up, with your thoughts on some of these topics.
For gene therapy drugs, we look at to cover or not to cover, and there's a lot more in that than just to say, hey, look, we're not going to cover them. So work with your consultant, work with your Alliant team to figure that out, or call us and we can help you think through that strategy. For GLP-1s, there's about 9 different things you can do to ensure that your plan is appropriately insulated from adverse risk on the GLP-1s, both for weight loss and for diabetic coverage, by the way. There's a number of things that we can advise, like now our network of prescribers. Have they been, a positive influence in this market, or have they just been writing willy-nilly the scripts? Stuff like that. And we can help you with that strategy. There's many different more that we can talk about beyond just to cover or not to cover for weight loss. In terms of why we are impartial and why we align with being completely vendor agnostic is we're consultants. At the end of the day, we're not pushing a product, we're not selling anything. We believe inherently we cannot advise clients to the best of our ability if we're tethered to a product, if we own a coalition, if we're pushing a service, imagine someone selling you, I don't know, carpet, for example, and they're the ones advising you on what the deal they're going to give you, but they also are the manufacturing the carpet. You can buy other carpets, but the one that they manufacture, they're telling you, oh, this is the best deal. This is the best carpet. Trust me with this carpet over here. You don't really know. You don't really know because you're trusting your advisor, and that advisor may have, misaligned incentives to push you to a product or to a solution where they're getting compensated both on the front end where they tell you about it, and by the way, on the back end where they don't. So that's part of it, right? There's bias.
Well, I like it. It keeps people on. It keeps people honest, right? And it keeps competition alive.
Right. By being vendor agnostic, by not owning a coalition, we're able to be that impartial advisor. We're able to show you what's really going on in the market. And beyond that, we have access to independent coalitions. It's not just because you don't own a coalition, you're behind the market. Hey, there's like 30 different coalitions out there, and we'll help you evaluate them impartially and show you, independent group purchasing organizations that are not dependent on a consulting firm, that don't capitate your data. A lot of these coalitions that are owned by consulting firms, they don't let your data out of house. You don't own your data. They don't allow you to audit or allow a third-party firm to audit. They don't want you knowing what's going on behind the curtain. They don't allow you to leave without conflict. If you want to leave and you want to go evaluate another broker or consultant, they can't see the contract. They can't see your data. They can't evaluate. There's a lot of challenges there. Now, Alliant has a couple of different strategies that we deploy to help roll out of coalitions, but there's fees with coalitions like that. There's confidentiality provisions that really lock up everything and becomes a problem. And by the way, if you want to say, am I getting a good deal? And they go, oh, yeah, of course you are. We'll show you the 2 other coalitions that we've built. It's showing you coalitions in a bubble. You're not looking at alternative coalitions. You're not looking at alternative or direct vendor deals because they are incentivized and they are the ones making the judgment call on the evaluation. So there's inherent bias there. And that's why we align with being vendor agnostic. And that approach is best in class. It allows us to leverage our scale in the market with certain vendors without mandating that there's a certain product, because we believe that there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Hey, great, you got a good discount or a great rebate through that coalition, but hey, you have pooled account resources. You have a pooled call center. You don't have anything that's specific to your overall population, which makes managing your metrics very difficult. It makes it difficult to review your data and understand if you got a good deal. So by being vendor agnostic, we have no conflict of interest. We have no restrictions on anything that you want to do. There's no termination restrictions. There's no.
Yeah, because most coalitions have a 3-year commitment.
Yeah, they do. Or they have a term for convenience provision, which means if you leave us, you have to leave this deal and you're left holding the bag. I've got 6 months left of my deal. I got to leave to go to another vendor. How? So that's how they keep you locked into your consulting agreement with them. So we have a couple of ways to excise clients out of those coalitions. I believe it's a best-in-class approach to be independent and agnostic.
And what size client, Joe, is typically where they start to be a good option to carve out the pharmacy? Is there a particular threshold client size that we like to start at? Because I have plenty of self-funded clients that are like 400 or 500 lives. Is that really the right size client to, with like maybe 3 million in premiums? Is that a good size to start doing that? Because I know the Blue Cross will bust your chops to carve out the pharmacy, and some of the other vendors are a little bit easier, which to your point is conflict of interest. Aetna is owned by CVS and Cigna owns ESI. So there's conflict of interest that happens on that side too. So when is really the right size to start looking at the pharmacy?
Consultant answer depends. What is your medical strategy? Are you looking at captives? If you're sub 1,000 employees, are you looking at captives? Are you looking at TPAs that are outside of the BUCAs, the big, if you're looking at, the different firms out there like the Blues, you're looking at United, Cigna, Anthem, Aetna.
Yeah, most of them will Joe, will go to one of the bigger carriers with the pharmacy carved in, like a year 1 moving from fully insured to ASO, or even like a year 2 strategy. But by year 3, or longer, they generally want to start looking at more cost saving options and more control, and that's where the pharmacy conversation usually comes up, is year 2 or 3, or even year 3 or later. And then the carriers, depending on the type of a funding arrangement they're coming from, they're usually, make it very difficult. Like they'll ratchet up their ASO fee if you carve out the pharmacy. Like they do all these tricks to try to talk you out of it or make it look unattractive to carve out the pharmacy. But there's some nice savings to be had. Every time I've ever looked at carving out pharmacies, the rebates, keeping more of the rebates, the discounts, the average, AWP and all these other things, you usually find some savings. I mean, it's usually not going to cost you more money to carve out.
Frank, that's a great point. It really does add a lot of value to carve out pharmacy, as long as you're able to, one, carve out from the integrated BUCAs, right, the Blues, United, Cigna, Anthem. If you're able to, because a lot of them have size requirements. Some say 500 employees or greater.
It's 1,000. Even in New England, it's 1,000 employees for Blue Cross Blue Shield in Massachusetts.
Right. So what do? Hey, well, look, I'm not gonna stay with a BUCA. I'm gonna move to a TPA where I retain control. So that may be an alternative strategy if you're a smaller market player. Above 1,000 employees, you really should be seriously considering carving out. That's my strong opinion, is because you're spending a lot of money at that point. At 1,000 employees, you're 2,000 members. That's probably roughly around $2.5 to $3 million in drug spend. And at that point, a 10% savings is $300,000. That's maybe 4 full-time employees a year worth of value. And that's a 10% savings, and that's if I'm not doing my job effectively. So,
well,
that's
at the end of the day, if the impact to the member is neutral, meaning that it's not going to look different to the member at the end of the day, because let's face it, to your point, pharmacy is probably the most utilized frontline benefit that employees see, and how they judge their insurance experience typically is how they, how their pharmacy fill goes. You know, it's if it's cost neutral to the employee and it's savings, these are programs the employer can put back in. They can use it as rate stabilization to offset the non-pharmacy, or the employee contributions. So it does have a very positive downplay, if you want to call it that. So we're running out of time. I think.
Well, I know, but I have one last question.
Yeah, go.
So Joe, as we know, not all brokers, consultants are built the same. But we also know that sometimes there's a strong relationship there. However, sometimes those brokers aren't strong on the pharmacy end. Will you / Alliant take on just a project and help somebody evaluate their pharmacy?
That's a great question too. Yeah, Stephanie, I mean, right on point. We do a comprehensive pharmacy diagnostic. We call it pharmacy diligence, where Alliant will proactively, complementary, and comprehensively look at every aspect of the pharmacy benefit, whether you're integrated to a major market player, integrated through a BUCA, whether you're with a TPA, whether you're with a pharmacy benefit manager today. There's always value in looking at that program. And even if you want to stay with Aetna and you don't want to carve out and you're 499 employees, Alliant can still take an evaluation of your agreement and your overall utilization data and say, hey, you're missing the mark here, here, and here. These are your weak areas. These are your areas where you should be thinking about risk mitigation, or you should be thinking about pricing, value. We might be looking at plan designs. We might be looking at clinical strategy and your clinical plan enrollment. We look at everything comprehensively, and we come back with actionable recommendations. So that's pharmacy diligence. Anybody on the call or anybody that feel free to reach out. We're more than happy to conduct that. And it's complimentary. So it's risk-free to a client. We're not marketing. We're not letting the carriers know or vendors know. We're not letting your consultant today, if you're not with us, know. It's completely done in a bubble. We're showing you these things. As long as we can get the data, we'll show you as much as we can. The more you give us, the more we're going to turn out.
I'm not used to that in my past life. This is usually like a $50,000 or $75,000 project.
Yes,
every single time. But if I even say, "Hi, this is Joe," that's $50,000 in my past life. This is my friend Joe. That'll cost you $50,000. Where's your checkbook?
I had worked at a firm like that too, and why I find this to be a strong value, why our clients and why our prospects have found it to be value, because before you hire Alliant for pharmacy consulting only, for all lines of business, whatever it may be, you get to see how we think in our approach, right? You get to see the ideas that Alliant comes up with, and you're able to really understand, how can they help me? Okay, great. we've got some cost savings initiatives we can pull the lever on today that are actionable, and we can get that value. It's delivered up front, cost savings immediately. Pharmacy is one of the only areas where you get that level of value back through a leveraged negotiation that we can help you with. But also, it's about cost avoidance in the future, and we help you with that too. We think through what's coming next and help you avoid those pitfalls before you fall down that trap. So I hope that helps. Pharmacy diagnostic and pharmacy diligence, they are the two things right there that can help you. And by the way, with everything that's going on with a lot of the J&J litigation that you may have heard of around ERISA, basically plan sponsor, ERISA risk fiduciary risk. You should be looking at diligence because it checks the box for your ERISA fiduciary risk. And I think that's something that we all should be thinking about, is how to make sure that we're documenting that we've done everything we can, that we have made proactive decisions, that we're doing the right things on behalf of our plan sponsor. I'm sorry, our plan as a plan sponsor. So, that to me is very important. It's immediate value recapture that you can see. It's a good gut check to your current strategy. It's a great way of insulating your plan from risk. And then aside that, you're getting a lot of consulting work for free just to see, how we think. And I think it's been very valuable for a lot of the prospects and clients that we've done this for. Over the last 6 years, since we've been really doing this type of process, we haven't found one client where we said, no, you're good. Everything's perfect. Haven't seen it.
And listen, there's always money, and there's always ways to better improve it. So this conversation today was amazing. Sorry I was a few late. I had some technical difficulty today. And then I'm sure you heard the dogs screaming in the background, so they definitely need to go for the potty. But this was a great discussion. I could seriously talk about this all day. We didn't even get into infertility and half the other things I probably would like to have talked about, and gender dysphoria and other things. So maybe that's for another topic.
Have me back. We'll have another conversation.
Yeah, I definitely would love for you to come back. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
And I know a really weird thing to say when you're talking about drugs and pharmacy, but as Karen from Will and Grace would say, this was a great discussion. honey, this was a very good discussion. But yes,
thank you. Good thing.
Yeah, it was great. So thank you again, Joe, and thank you, Stephanie, for coordinating. And we look forward to our next discussion. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.